Those familiar with the Torah know the story. Sarah is angered by the presence of Hagar and sends her and her son Ishmael away. Yet the Torah includes a particularly interesting tidbit in the description of Abraham's death. It says, and Abraham breathed his last, dying at a good ripe age, old and contented, and he was gathered to his kin. His son Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, facing Mamre. The Torah is very particular about details like this and is communicating a much bigger message. Ishmael was sent away, yet here he is at the funeral of his father standing next to Isaac. We have no record of these brothers being in contact with each other, yet here we are at the funeral of their father standing next to each other. There's no explanation and no details. Yet we have a very interesting midrash in a book called Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. While this midrash is attributed to Eliezer Hyrcanus of the 1st and 2nd centuries, scholars attribute its final form to the 9th century. It has widespread circulation and recognition in the Jewish community ever since its composition. In the 5th part of this book, it tells about how Abraham visited his son twice after he left. The first time he was not home, but his wife was, and she refused to give him bread and water. When Ishmael heard this, he divorced her. He then married a woman named Fatima. Abraham visited again in disguise, and Fatima gave him food and water. The Midrash then says, Abraham stood and prayed before the Holy One, blessed be he, and Ishmael's house became filled with all good things. When Ishmael returned, his wife told him about it, and Ishmael knew that his father still loved him. Of course, the name of his wife, Fatima, is significant, as it's the same name as the daughter of the prophet Muhammad. Now, this widely accepted midrash from the 8th century, so this is after Muhammad, it basically means that it is making a positive and explicit reference to Islam. Another interesting aspect of this story is that after Sarah passes away, it's said that Abraham married a woman named Keturah. In Jewish tradition, Keturah is in fact Hagar. It's said that Isaac went and sought out Hagar, Keturah, so that his father would not be alone. And there are other textual clues here that I won't be getting into. Many people in the Torah, in fact, had numerous names. Jethro actually had 7. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks really said it best when he said, quote, beneath the surface of the narrative, the sages read the clues and piece together a moving story of reconciliation between Abraham and Hagar on the one hand, Isaac and Ishmael on the other. Yet there was conflict and separation, but that was the beginning, not the end. Between Judaism and Islam, there could be friendship and mutual respect. Abraham loved both of his sons and was laid to rest by both. There is hope for the future in this story of the past. In my own life, especially in college and afterwards, I had many Muslim friends. One of my best friends is Muslim, and we would take trips together, especially during medical school and before marriage and family life started. And in the morning, I would don my tefillin, and he would pray to Mecca. We would pray to the same God, but according to our traditions. This acknowledgement that it was the same God didn't even need to be discussed. It is not only my opinion, but many others, that Islam is the one religion that is closest to Torah Judaism. As experiencing the legendary Arab Muslim hospitality myself many times over the years, and with Muslim friends joining me in Jewish holiday celebrations, there is a tremendous recognition of a similarity. What has interested me most, though, over the years, intellectually speaking, about Islam is the very schools of Islamic mysticism known as Sufism. My main spiritual teacher spent some time studying with a man named Sheikh Musafer, a well-known Turkish Sufi master. He didn't feel that there was anything that interfered with his Jewish practice, and since my teacher's focus was exploring imagination as a tool for spiritual growth, also introduced me to the teachings of Ibn Arabi. But I'm not the only Jewish person who holds in high esteem some of these teachings. It is well known that the son of Maimonides, his son's name was Abraham, also held some Sufi teachings in high esteem and even formed a spiritual practice influenced by his interaction in Egypt with local Sufi community. And finally, the classic book Duties of the Heart, written around 1,000 years ago, also borrows from Sufi concepts in its beautiful guidance on cultivating a spiritual life. Jewish people believe that the entire world is bound by 7 commandments of the children of Noah. Any Muslim who lives in accordance with the Quran and whose belief is not spoiled by idolatrous political ideologies that foster hatred of Jews is considered righteous among the nations, according to Judaism. If you don't see the commonalities, it's likely that you're being poisoned by politics or religious teachers that have come under the sway of political ideologies. Political ideologies are shifting sands that are often idolatrous and that hopefully one day will resolve themselves. Our job as children of Abraham is to see beyond the politics to our connection to God and worship Him. I believe it is the mystics of each religion, those that experientially work on grasping the oneness of God, that can serve as examples to see that we can, in fact, worship the same God with the appreciation that each tradition is magnifying humanity's connection to the divine. Growing up, I was incredibly lucky to travel to Europe often, and I visited the great churches there, but I must admit, I never felt at home in a church. The symbols and the icons, they just felt so foreign to me, even as a kid. While I could appreciate the quiet and feel that this was a place of prayer, it felt and still does feel foreign to me. Yet I recall the first time I was in a mosque. While it obviously didn't feel Jewish to me, it also didn't feel foreign. It felt recognizable, and I could feel that we were worshiping the same God, even if at that time I knew very little about Islam. I believe very strongly that it is inevitable that one day these two religious communities will start building bridges of mutual respect that starts with recognition of the one true God as taught by our common father Abraham. May this happen soon in our days.